This office is dusty. It's an older office. It's definitely old. I should stop wearing black shirts. Okay, what's going on, guys? This is Rob. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. I have not had coffee yet. I wouldn't say I'm running on fumes, but I would say that I am still waking up. So, first things first, this video is gonna have spoilers. And the second thing, thank you guys. I misspoke yesterday in the video that I made. I meant to say the spell that was cast at the end of the movie made the world forget about Peter Parker in general, right? That, who Peter Parker is at all. Instead, I think I said that the spell was like the completed version of the original spell, which is the world forgot that Peter Parker was Spider-Man. Regardless, thank you guys for correcting me on that. Yes, the spell that was cast at the end of the movie basically removed the world's knowledge of Peter Parker, period. No one knows who Peter Parker is, right? No one's ever heard of this guy, and anybody he meets, he will have basically been meeting for the very first time, right? It's why Happy Hogan doesn't know who Peter Parker is. It's why MJ and Ned Leeds don't know who Peter Parker is. And so this is a really, really important thing, because in the world of comics, we call this a soft reboot. This is not new. Marvel Comics does this all the time. And in fact, that's what the original One More Day, One Moment in Time, and Brand New Day storylines were. They were basically a soft reboot of Spider-Man, right? That this guy, Joe Quesada, had come in as editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics in the aftermath of like their near bankruptcy in the 1990s. And he was like, clean slate Spider-Man. He didn't like the idea of Spider-Man being married to Mary Jane Watson and stuff like that. He felt like it aged him. It didn't keep him like eternally youthful, which is kind of what you need if you're gonna be able to sell Spider-Man comics for any real length of time. Otherwise, people will expect him to just kind of age out of the role and then eventually leave. And so you got basically One More Day, which got rid of the marriage between Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson. And then you got One Moment in Time and Brand New Day that was designed to remove the world's knowledge that Peter Parker was Spider-Man. Of course, the world knew that because in the comics, Peter Parker had revealed his identity publicly during the Civil War storyline as a display that he trusted Iron Man in his statement about superhuman registration and all that kind of stuff. And so again, it's a soft reboot, right? That basically it kind of restructures and reworks the character in such a way to where they are basically starting over. And in fact, that's what we were told in the movie, that when the spell goes through, right? When the spell happens and basically the world forgets that Peter Parker exists, Peter Parker's gonna have to start over. He's gonna be starting from scratch. And that's really kind of the nature of the ending of this film, is that Peter Parker becomes the Spider-Man that we always expected him to be, the Spider-Man that we know. You guys have probably noticed over the course of Homecoming and Far From Home, and even to a degree the beginning of this movie, that Peter Parker wasn't really Spider-Man, right? That Tom Holland wasn't really the Peter Parker that we know from either the comics or just the films or a combination of both, right? That Peter Parker's usually broke. That Peter Parker sells pictures to the Daily Bugle and makes just enough money to live, right? He's surviving paycheck to paycheck, not really even living paycheck to paycheck, right? Just surviving, right? That's the nature of Peter Parker. It's called the Parker luck. That things just don't work out for him, right? The things just that anytime things could take an upward trend and his life could get better, something happens that just stops it from happening. The Parker luck's kind of just an on-running joke, right? So like if you guys remember the old Tobey Maguire movies when he was like, yeah man, like I've got this date and I've got flowers and everything, I'm gonna go see like Mary Jane Watson or so on, and then like Harry Osborn comes swooping in and like attacks him, in Spider-Man 3. That's an example, right? That's the Parker luck, right? Just anything bad that can happen will happen. And so it's one of those kind of hallmarks of his character, the fact that he's broke, the fact that things just don't really seem to work out in his favor. And Tom Holland has officially become that Spider-Man now, right? He's going to take his GED. Now, there are a couple possibilities on what you could see here. A really good possibility is the introduction of the Fantastic Four. Not insofar as it's on his face, right? Like, Johnny Storm riding a giant four in the sky, Peter Parker's like, wow, I want to be a part of that team. No, what I could see happening is that we know Peter Parker is taking his GED if he hasn't already done it. So likely when he gets into his apartment, he's got like a stack of books and one of them is the GED. And so it looks like he's getting ready to take it, right? He's going to study for it and he's going to take it. We know he's going to crush it. The guy was going to be accepted into MIT, right? I mean, we know he's gonna crush a GED test, but I wouldn't be surprised if, whether it's because he crushed that test or because he applied to maybe various colleges or what have you, and his intelligence was just tested off the charts, that he gets an invitation to join the Future Foundation. And that's the extent of it, right? That's all you get, right? He's going through his mail and there's an envelope that he throws on the table and you're cordially invited to join the Future Foundation. And that's it. Why does that matter? Because the Future Foundation was a think tank of the world's smartest young people created by Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four. So while it may not necessarily be that Reed is like officially Mr. Fantastic and like Susan Storm is the Invisible Woman and Ben Grimm has become the Thing and Johnny Storm is, Johnny Storm, while that may not have happened yet, right, the trip into space and the cosmic rays, that Reed Richards does exist in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and he's noticed Peter Parker. Again, it'd be a small little cameo thing. That's the kind of stuff that you could see. If I'm being honest with you guys, what I think will happen over the course of the future of the MCU is that we know with the new trilogy coming, it can kind of go a couple different ways. We know that, for example, that Sony is building up the Sinister Six. Right now, things are a little murky. I mean, we kind of got the Sinister Six in the movie, but not really. They weren't really the Sinister Six. I mean, they were in name only, but in terms of like the role they played, what made the Sinister Six is that they were a group that was brought together by Dr. Octopus for the sole purpose of destroying Spider-Man, right? That each one of them had been defeated by Spider-Man over their time as a criminal, and that unifying their efforts and trying to kill Spider-Man was the best chance they had of pulling it off. In Spider-Man No Way Home, this is really more the Sinister Six by circumstance, right? It's not really the Sinister Six, it's just 6 villains who happen to be in the same place. That's really all it is, right? There's nothing sinister about it. I mean, maybe the Sinister 3 is the closest you get, right? Like Electro and Sandman and Lizard, and then like the Sinister Fourth kind of, but not really, who showed up at the last minute, right at the 11th hour, which is the Green Goblin, when he comes swooping in like at the very end of the battle and destroys the box that's holding the spell. So it's not really Sinister Six, but we know that Sony's working on Sinister Six. More so than that, Sony's developing villains. We know that there's like Michael Morbius, right? We know that like Venom kind of seems to exist out there, but now we've basically confirmed Venom is in his own universe, right? Like Tom Hardy Venom is out there doing his own thing in a universe that's totally separate from the MCU. But Michael Morbius showed up, and you've also got like Michael Keaton, who is in the trailer. So presumably Michael Morbius is in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as well. And then there's whatever else happens to come out of that, right? We know that they're working on like a Kraven the Hunter film and things along those lines. So this direction for the future of Spider-Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe could go a couple different ways. Maybe they kill him off. He's killed by the Sinister Six like he was in the Ultimate Universe. Maybe he retires. We'll make a video on that in the future, right? Where we think the actual series is going in the new trilogy, because I've got a few ideas. And I think one of them is the most plausible idea. I think it's a really, really good idea. All we really know right now is that Feige, at least according to MovieWeb, in an interview that he did recently about, at least it was posted like 11 hours ago, is he's like, we're definitely working on Spider-Man 4. I think they made that determination. I think they were a little iffy. They were a little unsure, because the way the movie ends, they could just stop. They could just be like, okay, like we're done with Tom Holland Spider-Man now. Like that's it, right? Like we'll have like Spider-Man, right? You'll see Spider-Man in future movies, but like you won't see him as Tom Holland or something like that. Or they're like, we're done with solo movies. And like, that's basically it. And then like the only time you ever see Tom Holland again is something akin to like Iron Man, when you just see him in other movies, right? Like after Iron Man 3, you never got a solo Iron Man film again, but he appeared in like Infinity War, Civil War, Avengers Endgame, things like that. And maybe they could just do that with Spider-Man. Such as it is, Feige was like, nah, man, we're gonna make a lot of money here, so we're definitely doing a Spider-Man 4. And we would be foolish not to ask for it, right? I mean, we want more Spider-Man movies, especially now when you look at the fact that like Tom Holland as Spider-Man was basically spoiled over his entire tenure, right? Everything was just given to him. Tony Stark's just like, here's everything you need to become an effective Spider-Man. And he didn't really understand the lesson that with great power must come great responsibility until Aunt May died. The fact that his actions have consequences, and what he did basically got Aunt May killed. The Green Goblin wasn't lying when he said that. When he said, I may have been the one that dealt the killing blow to Aunt May, but you're the one who put her in this situation in the first place. If it hadn't been for you, I wouldn't be here, she wouldn't be dead. And that's an accurate statement, right? It's not him messing with Peter Parker. That's the God's honest truth. And so that was really kind of Peter realizing, I'm the one who got my Aunt May killed, and him kind of becoming Spider-Man, right? The character that we all know and love and that we expect him to be. And so when you look at like the 3 movies, right, it's just kind of an origin story for his character. The question now is, what are we going to see in this new trilogy? The one thing I will say about this idea that I have, I think at the end of this next trilogy, right, so I guess like Spider-Man 6, they're gonna kill him. They're gonna kill off Tom Holland. You know, another question that has to be asked here is, are we going to see like MJ and Jacob Batalon again? The nature of their characters and the way that they were written, we could never see them again. And that would be it, right? Again, we kind of have some ideas on what's gonna happen with them, and we'll talk about them in future videos, but there's a lot of cool things. I think that the way this movie ended in terms of like Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, I think they're setting the stage for future appearances in Marvel Cinematic Universe projects, specifically Secret Wars or Spider-Verse, right? We know that like Beyond Spider-Verse is coming out, the new Spider-Verse movie, where they gave us a little bit of a teaser where like basically Miles Morales, the animated version, met like Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099. We know that kind of thing was going on. So we know they're building up the concept of the Spider-Verse. I wouldn't be surprised if at a future point in time, you end up seeing some kind of massive crossover event between what's basically the Into the Spider-Verse cast and like Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. And I think it'd be great if it was, you know, having this kind of giant Spider-Verse brought together for the purpose of uniting all these different Spider-Men. I think this was kind of a taste, right? Because if you notice, it kind of happened on both sides, right? Into the Spider-Verse was animated Miles meeting like Spider-Gwen and Spider-Ham and Spider-Man Noir and all those different versions of Peter Parker. But then when you look at like Spider-Man No Way Home, it's Tom Holland meeting Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. It's basically the same thing, right? Like two teams of Spider-Man coming together to face off against a singular threat, with that singular threat basically being a very humanized threat, right? Something along those lines. It's kind of cool to see. I'm excited about the idea, the prospect of what may come with all this stuff, because then it's very easy to unite those two things together. And then you've got animated Miles and animated Gwen and animated, Spider-Man Noir teaming up with like Andrew Garfield, which would be kind of weird to see Andrew Garfield macking on like animated Spider-Gwen, but then like Tom Holland and Tobey Maguire and that kind of a thing. I think it'd be great. It'd be a great concept. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments section. Let me know if you guys are really, if you guys think that this is all kind of leading up, right? Like the ending of this film, the fact that like Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire were left alive as opposed to being killed off, the fact that it's like, we'll see you around. Like, let me know if you guys think that's leading into like a future Spider-Verse event where like all these characters are going to come back for a huge crossover storyline. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.